International donors meeting in Paris have pledged €1 billion in aid to help Ukrainians survive the winter. Ukraine is represented at the meeting by Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. The money will mainly go towards keeping the civilian population fed and warm. Russian missile attacks have left millions without water, power or heat. DW correspondent Lisa Louis is at the conference in Paris. I asked her how the €1 billion pledged compares with the amount Ukraine actually needs.
Mr. Zelensky, he spoke this morning at the beginning of this international conference, and he put his own figure on the table. That was €800 million. As you can see, 1 billion is above that. What's really important now is that Ukraine does not only need money, they need other supplies, they need generators, they need gas turbines, they need spare parts, they need, help with civil engineering, with engineering services. And that is exactly what the dozens of countries that have come together and the international organizations that also came together this morning here have promised to Ukraine. So it looks like, at least when you look at the paper, on the paper it looks like Ukraine is really getting what it is asking for at this very moment.
OK, and it's important to stress that we're talking about civilian aid. We're not talking about tanks and weapons. But this is the fourth of these Ukraine donor conferences this year. Is there anything different about this from the other three?
Well, there is actually, temperatures are dropping. It's getting colder, not only here in Paris, but also in Ukraine, obviously. And as President Emmanuel Macron has been underlining over the past few days and today again, Russian military they are targeting civilian infrastructure, electricity infrastructure. Mr. Zelensky today said that 12 million Ukrainians are not connected to the power grid right now. So there is a lot of urgency to provide very fast help, support for these people that are struggling, that they don't have light, they don't have heating in Ukraine. And that's exactly what international donors want to help with. And there's also one other thing. The international community has put in place what they call a platform, a coordination platform to better coordinate what Ukraine needs and what the different countries have already provided, so that it really fits to the Ukrainian purpose, what the international community is providing for the country.
And the delegations are also meeting business leaders. What's being discussed there?
Exactly. They're meeting here at the Economics Ministry right now. 700 companies have come together, French companies that are either already active in Ukraine or want to work in the country. What this is about, it's not just about reconstruction after the war. It's also about being active now, helping with reconstructing the country while the war is still ongoing. When zones of Ukraine, certain areas are liberated, they want to reconstruct the economy there, the electricity infrastructure, bridges, railways. There were a few agreements signed here today with a figure of €100 million in different sectors. And lots of French companies are determined to participate in this reconstruction effort. As Emmanuel Macron, the French president, put it, he said, Ukraine can only be reconstructed if it has a strong economic backbone that is already there when the war finally ends.
Thank you for that. Lisa Louis in Paris. Well, that money, of course, is needed because repeated Russian attacks on civilian infrastructure since it invaded Ukraine in February have left millions in the cold and dark. In our next report, Ukraine correspondent Nick Connolly compares the support Ukraine has so far been promised with what it's actually received.
We will continue to support Ukraine
for as long as it takes.
Since the very beginning of this war, we worked very hard together in order to help Ukraine to resist and to be resilient.
And we, the European Union, stand here by them in these very difficult times as long as it takes.
But how generous have European governments really been? 9 months into this war on its doorstep, and Europe has only just caught up with the United States. The Kiel Institute for the World Economy says the EU and European governments have now together pledged €52 billion, compared with $48 billion from the US. That might sound like a lot, but it's less than a tenth of what the EU is spending on its own post-COVID recovery programme. And then there's the question of timing. Experts criticise that it can take months for promises announced in front of the TV cameras in Kyiv to actually materialise. For now at least, Ukraine's government can still afford to patch up basic infrastructure after each new Russian attack. But many here in Ukraine worry their country's in such bad shape they might soon need support on a whole different level, just to carry on. And that's even before anyone starts counting the costs of eventual rebuilding. Europeans will be asked to make good on their promise to help for as long as it takes, and that could be decades.